Hey guys, welcome back to Grassroots. I'm in my living room today. I was doing some laundry earlier and I started, of course, getting bored with that, so my mind went to planting my garden. And I've seen so many people posting lately. All of their little seedlings are starting to get ready to transplant, and we've got piles of seeds that we've gathered for this gardening season, and everybody's kind of playing Tetris out in their garden spaces, or at least they are on paper in their mind. Where in the world are we going to put all of these plants? And I've seen so many posts, so I started thinking about the same thing. Where am I going to put all of these plants? I garden in a suburban neighborhood in my little front yard. I have 4 raised beds and 6 containers, and then some other little pots and containers and things. So I don't grow on a lot of land, but I sure do like homegrown produce, so I would like to grow as much stuff as I can possibly fit in this little home garden of mine. So I started thinking about how to get organized in the garden, and I've really been thinking about the best way to teach other people how to do this as well. With the headlines lately and the bird flu going around, I watched the news at lunch today and they were talking about a possible shortage of eggs and things, which there's nothing I can do about that because I do not have chickens, but it's not a bad thing to think about. But I would like to grow as much of my own food as I can. And become more self-sustainable. And I know it's a big movement right now, grow food, not lawns, and I'm all about it. I am all about it. So I thought I would go over today 3 easy steps to getting organized in your garden. So the first step, you're gonna need to know when your first frost date is and your last frost date. And that will give you how many days are in your growing season. And it's super easy to find that out. Just Google it. When is my first frost date, or last frost date? You need to know your last frost date first, because that's the last time on average you get freezing temperatures. So you need to know that. And then you need to know when your first frost date is in the fall. And that is when you'll start to get to freezing again, and most plants can't survive past that. So that will give you the number of days that you have to grow things. So in my zone, I'm in zone 7B. I'm in eastern Oklahoma, right on the border of Arkansas. My closest major city is Fort Smith, Arkansas. So I'm in zone 7B, but that is not that important to know. You don't necessarily need to know your zone. All your zone is going to tell you is the average low temperatures that you get in your region. That's it. So in zone 7B, I believe my average low temperature is like 20. That doesn't help me really in gardening, because I just need to know when is the last time it's going to be freezing. When is it safe for me to plant stuff in my garden and not have a frost come and kill it? So that's really what you need to focus on, is your last frost date and then your first frost date. So I have 196 days to grow in between those dates here in my region. So that's step 1. Find out when you can plant and how many days you have to grow and harvest a plant. So pretty easy stuff, just a Google search will do it. Step number 2 is read your seed packets. I see so many questions every day about, is it too late to start my tomatoes? what can I start inside? What needs to be started outside? And all of that information is found on your seed packets. So, for example, let me get one out here and I'll just pick one and read it to you. Let's see. Rosemary. I like rosemary. Let's see what this seed packet says. It says in big bold letters, the very first thing, start indoors about 10 weeks before last anticipated frost. Check. When do I plant this and how do I plant this? So rosemary, for example, we're going to start it indoors 10 weeks before the last frost date. So you've just looked up your last frost date. Mine here is April 12th is my average last frost date. So I'm going to go on my calendar and I'm going to count back 10 weeks before that date. So that put me probably sometime late January, early February. So you know that this needs to be started from seed indoors. So when you see all the little seed cell trays and things in the store with your seed starting mix, this is one of the things that you're going to want to use in a situation like that. Now, I personally don't start my seeds indoors. I winter sow them outdoors, and you've seen me talk about that in prior videos, so I won't get into that right now, but I did the exact same thing. 10 weeks before my average last frost date, I started this in my winter sowing. So I went through every one of my seed packs and I read them. And I first determined whether they said start indoors or direct sow. So a lot of things seed packets will say on the back. Let me pull an example for you on a direct sow thing. Okay, so this is Japanese wasabi radish. And the back of this, planting instructions. Sow in several small successions for a continuous harvest. So I know that this did not give me timing on when to sow it, but they do have a website on here that will tell you. Okay, yes it does. Right here, there's some little squares here. Let me show you what the back of the seed pack looks like. So this is what I just read to you, which really didn't give me a lot of information, but I turned and looked over here and I found frost hardy, yes. So that tells me that I can direct sow this seed in my garden before the last frost date, which is what I've done. I planted all of my radish seeds in my garden beds about a week and a half ago. So I've actually already got some of these sprouting up and it's been cool at night. We just, pretty sure we had a frost last night, a little bit. So I separated my seeds between the ones that said to start indoors and the ones that said to direct sow. Then with my direct sown seeds, I went through all of them to find out if they are cool hardy or frost hardy like my radishes are, or if they need to be direct sown after the last frost date. So let's look at sweet corn. Sweet corn, and I went through all of these and I actually underlined all of the pertinent information if they had a lot of writing like this one does. So let's see, I underlined sow seeds directly in the garden, spring after soil has warmed. So this needs to be direct sown in the garden after the last frost date, when the soil has become warm. And then you can succession plant every 3 weeks until early summer. So that right there lets me know this is a warm weather crop. This is not something I would have started a week and a half ago with my radishes. This needs to wait because right now it's like April 5th. So we've got a little bit until our last frost. And that's just an average, guys. That doesn't mean that you won't have a frost after that date. So you also want to watch your weather forecast when it gets into time like this. And that's a lot of things I'm seeing posted right now as well, is what can I plant outside right now? And my answer is always read your seed packet. It'll probably tell you that. So read your seed packets. And then what I did is I just sorted them out into transplant, Direxo cool, Direxo warm. And then I just put them all in a Ziploc bag together. So later, after the last frost date, when it's time to sow some seeds in the warm, I can just grab my whole bag and go get it done. So there's that. And then here's my Direxo cool. And these are all the seeds that say they have to be direct sown, but there are frost hardy. So these are all seeds that I've already planted out in the garden. So that will tell you your timing. Your seed pack will also tell you the days to maturity. And this is important when you're planning the layout of your garden and you're playing Tetris with all of your plants and all of your seeds and trying to figure out what's going to go where. And then you start looking into things like companion planting. What are good companion plants for tomatoes or for radishes or for peppers? You know, all the things, because we're trying to cram as much into a little space as we can. At least I am. I don't have a lot of room to grow things. So when I start to look at the days to maturity, that will kind of give me an idea of how I can make the most use out of a space. So for example, I have containers. They're fairly decent sized containers. If you look at the back of a radish seed pack, it says somewhere between like 20 to 24 days to maturity. So from the time I put that seed in the dirt until the day I eat a radish is only 25 days. It's pretty fast growing. So I have already planted a bunch of radishes in the containers, even though that's not what's going to be in those containers a month from now. Those radishes will be done and harvested, and then I'll have another empty container to work with. So then I will follow the radishes up with something like a squash plant or a zucchini plant, because those get direct sown in warm weather. So right now, being that we're not even to the last frost date yet, my radishes are already started. And then in 30 days from now, it'll be like the beginning of May. And a lot of people, a lot of old farmers and people that have been gardening for a long time, if you listen to them, they will tell you not to plant until after Mother's Day. What they're talking about is your direct sown warm weather crops. Because I've been in Oklahoma now since 2003. It's 2022, so nearly, 20 years I've been here now. We've always had one last frost after Easter. So Easter this year kind of falls late. It's like April 17th, I think, is Easter. But our average last frost date is April 12th, which last year Easter was like 2 weeks ago or something. So we always have one last frost after Easter. So the old timers will tell you, don't plant till after Mother's Day. They don't mean don't plant anything. They mean your direct zone warm weather stuff, like pumpkins and squash and corn and tomatoes and peppers and all the things that have longer days to maturity that are going to take, 60, 70, 80, 90 days until harvest day. But with a 196-day growing season here, I can do radishes in a container and then turn right around behind it and grow zucchini. And the zucchini will grow all, summer long. And then probably by the time I'm harvesting the zucchini, for example, we're going to be getting into fall. Late summer, it's going to be really hot, but there's only like a month before it starts getting cool. I can then follow that zucchini with more radishes or kale or spinach, something that's frost hardy that you can start late in the summer and grow into the fall. And so when I am planning out my garden, the back of the seed pack has all the information I need to know. So I need to know the days to maturity, if it is frost hardy or frost tender. And then I also need to make room for my transplants or have a plan for my transplants. So my started seeds that I've started, back in February, like the rosemary or my tomatoes and peppers, I need to make a space for those. And then the back of your seed pack will tell you your spacing, how far apart you need to plant things. So you'll want to, have a good idea of how much room you have, say, in a raised bed that you can plant multiple things in, and your seed packet will tell you how far apart each plant needs to be from each other. So if you're doing like the square foot gardening method, you know that you can put in one square plot of space, so many tomato plants, for example, or so many radishes. I think it's like 24 radishes you can fit in a square foot. Multiple tomatoes. So you need to know your spacing, and that seed packet will tell you. And then the seed packet oftentimes will tell you, Chanel, you're making a lot of noise. Thank you. It will tell you the size of your mature plants. It will usually tell you how many inches tall it grows. It will also tell you if that plant, how it grows. Does it grow vines? Does it need room? Like, say, a pumpkin plant will just, grow these long, windy vines on the ground. Some pumpkin plants are bush varieties that will not ramble like that. They'll stay in a little bush, and those are good to grow in containers. Or like some squashes or bush variety, and it will tell you the size of the plant. So I'll know I could probably only fit one squash plant in a container. So you'll want to know the size the mature plant is going to be. You also need to know if it's a bushing or vining type, so that you can plan for your plant's needs. Is it going to need support? Does it need a trellis? In my garden, I have one cattle panel trellis in between two of my beds, where I can plant things like cucumbers or melons that will grow viney, but they need support because their fruits are heavy. So that was the very first thing I put on paper when I drew out my garden plan, was what was I gonna grow on the trellis. And then I kind of went from there. I get that notification off of there. So the garden layout is going to be your step 3. So after you've done step 2 and read all your seed packs, got everything organized, figured out how much space you need, what the plant's special needs are as far as support, then you can start to map out your garden space. So here's mine. And that's what I've been working on today, is kind of figuring out, like, you can see all my little containers. I have a plant written there, winter squash, pumpkin, zucchini, yellow squash. But it's not time to plant those things yet, so I didn't write it down. I just went and did it because it's time to do it. I direct sowed radishes in every container I've got, because I know in 20-25 days those will be in my belly or preserved. Hopefully y'all. I tried to grow radishes last year. I think I pulled one, and it was the teeniest little radish you ever did see. It was pitiful. So I'm hoping I'll get some radishes this year. I'm actually kind of excited. On the Baker Creek Facebook, they were doing a seed trade. So anytime you order seeds from Baker Creek, they send you a free seed pack. and you just get what you get. So, and you can see it's labeled right there, free seed. And so I actually didn't get this for my free seed. I got a flower seed, a purple phlox, I think it was. And I already have so many other flower seeds. So when they did the seed swap and somebody posted these Japanese wasabi radishes, I was like, oh, do you want some purple phlox flowers? And she did. So we've traded seeds. We're updating each other. I just sent her a picture yesterday of my little baby radish seedlings and said, hey, look, they've sprouted. So we're gonna keep each other posted on those. So I was excited about that. But yeah, you can see what I have written down. You just have to think about your succession. So I'm not only gonna grow this in this container, that's what I'm gonna plant later. And so I needed to be reminded, you know, in a month from now, oh, what was I gonna plant in these containers? I have it written down. So I didn't write down radishes because I just did it. And then this is my arch trellis here. So you can see I have written cukes and melons on either side of that. And so I also have radishes in this raised bed and brassicas here. But once it gets warm, those brassicas they're gonna be done. They don't like hot weather at all. They'll bolt and go to seed, or I'll pull them out, but I'll have room after they're done to then stick an acorn squash in there. So when you're looking at a pile of seeds as big as I am, there's a lot of seeds in there. And looking at all your transplants and thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have room in my garden. I bet you do, because I do. And I've even got some spare room that I decided to grow a few more things that I wasn't even planning on growing this year, because once I sat down and figured out my timing on some things, radishes and brassicas are not going to be in those raised beds in a month. So, ooh, what can I put there now? So I hope this helped you. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. This is my second year growing a garden in this house. I am by no means an expert, guys. I joked all last season that I was mostly harvesting knowledge and wisdom. So I have done a whole spring, summer season here. I've done a whole fall, another fall garden followed it. So I've done a whole year of gardening here. So I'm kind of learning what works for me here. What works for me here might not work for you. But I guess the main thing that I want to get across to you today is the importance of reading the back of your seed packets. And you can get a lot of information there that you just might not have even thought to look there. It might be overwhelming, and it's just easier to hop on a Facebook group and say, hey, when can I do this? And is it too late to do this? And a lot of those questions are answered for you right there on the back of your seed pack. So I hope this helps. 3 simple steps to planting your garden. And let me know what questions you have in the comments. Bye-bye.